Throwdown Nation, welcome aboard for yet another episode. Tonight is episode 17 of the Throwdown with Matt, and we are doing something a little different tonight. Tonight, I am pleased to have with me fellow wrestling podcaster and fellow wrestling fan, Mr. Xander Hobbes. How you doing, Xander?
I'm doing great. Thanks again for having me. This is a really cool opportunity, and I'm just so excited to be on this with you right now.
Well, believe me, thank you. I've been, like I said before we went live, I've been looking forward to this all week. So we'll just go ahead and get into some of the matters at hand here.
Sure.
And first question I'm going to bring up is, how long have you been watching wrestling? Have you been a lifelong fan, or is it a new thing, or what?
I've been a lifelong fan. I mean, I've been watching wrestling with my dad and my grandpa for as long as I can remember. Like, there's stories of me, like as a kid, just learning how to talk, saying like Hulk Hogan and Tito Santana, the British Bulldog, Jake Roberts, stuff like that. So it's just kind of stuck with me throughout the years. And, you know, here I am in 2024, still in it, like repping it and everything.
Gotcha. I know what you mean. I've been a fan, varying levels of fandom over the years, but I got started right around age 11 as a kid in Florida, and I'm going to be 55 next month. So, I mean, I grew up with the territory days, saw the Monday Night Wars beginning to end, saw the rise and fall of ECW, the whole nine. So
same here.
Yep. So what is your earliest memory of wrestling as a fan?
Well, the earliest ones that I remember, like if we're going to go way back, I remember like just little snippets. Like I remember when like I'd hear the Road Warriors come out and they'd come out to Iron Man. And I remember seeing them, or seeing Hulk Hogan come out to Eye of the Tiger and hitting that music playing. Those are like my first memories of it. And then like one of my most fond memories is like SummerSlam 91, watching Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect for the Intercontinental title. And back then, like, I wasn't smartened up to the business. I didn't know the backstage stuff, and I didn't know about title changes or anything like that. And I loved watching the Hart Foundation, and I loved watching Bret Hart. And I didn't think that Bret Hart was going to win because he's never a singles guy. But then he ended up beating Perfect. And I remember my friend and I and my dad all jumped off our couch and we're just so happy. And like, that's like one of the things that just has stuck with me throughout the years. One out of many, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah. I guess really about the earliest storyline that I remember was, again, as a kid, watching the feud in Florida Championship Wrestling between Kevin Sullivan and Dusty Rhodes. And, we just lost Kevin Sullivan.
Right.
But I mean, he played a really evil character at the time. And as an 11-year-old, Kevin Sullivan scared the bejeebers out of me. I mean, he was a scary dude when you're a kid.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess it could kind of correlate to that towards like the Undertaker when he first came out. Cause like I didn't know about Kevin Sullivan until like the Taskmaster days. And then I had to go back and watch his old stuff where he was doing the whole Satanic Panic stuff and everything like that. But I remember when the Undertaker used to came out and they used to show kids in the crowd and show them like gulping and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
And my little sister wasn't allowed to watch wrestling because she thought the Undertaker was real. So so I totally get where you're coming from. Like,
yeah. So we're gonna like I said, we're going to play the speed round game kind of throughout this. And tonight's theme is going to be legends and leaders.
Right. Okay.
And so I'm going to name a name and you just tell me the first thing that pops into your mind.
Sure.
Jim Ross.
Greatest of all time.
Yep. the voice of our childhood.
You know, like I remember like him and like, cause I grew up with different like guys, you know what I mean? There was Monsoon and Heenan, you know, I really like their dynamic, but you know, something hit different with King and JR, and just hearing him at the end of like Monday Night Raw on the verge of like having a stroke, like yelling about Triple H, like turning on someone or everything like that. Just as the show fades out, it's like just core memories locked in. So he's like one of the best.
Yep. You know, one of my guests on here recently, a guy named Tomer Shalom. He is actually he's based up in Canada, but he is originally from Israel, and he came to Canada knowing virtually no English, and he basically learned English by watching Jim Ross.
That's pretty awesome. That's kind of like I watched this interview, and Kevin Owens was talking about how he learned English from watching old WWF shows. So yeah, I mean, like it's universal. That's awesome.
Yeah. I just thought that was a pretty neat story.
That is cool.
So did you, Xander, ever contemplate trying to become a wrestler?
I actually did. I took my high school graduation money and enrolled into a wrestling school down in the Orange County called Knox Professional Wrestling. And I did that. And I finished that. I wrestled in a couple of indie feds, you know, back in the day in my early 20s and stuff like that. And then I got injured. I overshot a move. My doctor said, you know, it's best that you don't do this anymore. I still have a herniated L5 till this day, which is nothing compared to what other people have. But, you know, I got nervous and I was like, okay, let me stop this. And I went on to do something else. But, you know, for a few years, I did take some bumps. I have a bump card, but yeah, it's not as easy as a lot of people think, but I don't think people think that anymore. People have more respect for the business than they did, say, back in the day.
Oh, for sure. You know, it's funny. At the time that, you know, if I were ever going to have tried to pursue anything like that, at that time, wrestling was the land of the giants. And I'm a fairly small guy. I'm right around 5'5.5". So okay. I mean, you know, I didn't have the size, at least at that time, to really ever contemplate trying to do it. Now, you know, now you've got a lot of smaller, really athletic guys that are actually having good careers of it.
Absolutely.
But, you know, it's definitely changed over the years.
Yeah. And I wasn't the biggest guy either when I started out. You know, I'm 5'9", but now I'm like 200 pounds. Back then I was not. I was probably $150 soaking wet. So like I was always like, I looked up to guys like Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart and like, you know, Eddie Guerrero, a lot of those guys, you know, because they were the smaller guys and the more athletic ones. And I dug that. Don't get me wrong. I like the big guys and stuff like that too, but I related more to those guys. So I modeled my style, tried a little bit after that, but like I tried not to do so many high flying things, but you know, I had to do that to stand out from all the other guys that were in my group. But it was a great experience, to be honest with you. Like if my body held up, then I would probably still be doing it. But, you know, that wasn't the case.
Gotcha. Well, you know, there's a reason for everything. I mean,
absolutely.
So speed round. Tony Khan.
Clueless.
In over his head.
Yeah. It's just like, I want them to succeed. Don't get me wrong. I'm not one of those tribalists and I love pro wrestling, all of it. And the thing is, he had a good deal going, but the guy, he doesn't know how to book. He goes from having these big pops to get these big people coming in, and then they just get lost in catering, and you never hear from them. And it's just like they do some good stuff. They have great matches, you know what I mean? But like, we know from watching wrestling for years and years and years, it takes more than just a great match. Like there's a lot of people, you know, that I look up to, and it's just like great matches don't sell tickets. Like just look at WrestleMania 3, for example. everybody will tell you that the best match on that card was Ricky Steamboat and Randy Savage. But what brought those people's asses into the seats? It was Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, because you had that storyline going on with it. Like, I love a technical wrestling match as much as the next guy, but you gotta have like more of it. You got to get those people in there that aren't like us. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. You know, that's the thing. Like you were just saying, I mean, in terms of in-ring and work rate, there's nothing better than AEW. But, you know, Tony Khan needs to learn to delegate and get a booking team and not try to do the whole thing himself.
Right.
Because, I mean, it was going great for a while, but the last year especially has really dropped off.
Yeah, man, like 1 to 2 years, like it's just been a chore to watch. Like they were hitting their stride like in 2020, like 2021, a little bit before the pandemic, they were doing well. And then it just kind of dropped off. And it's just like, you can't just bring people in. Look what they did with Sasha Banks, Mercedes Moné. Like one of the best when it comes to the 4 horsewomen, like work rate, character, everything. She was on top of it in WWE. She comes to AEW with all this fanfare, and it's just not the same.
And they've done nothing with her. Yeah.
You can't tell me that it's the same. Like her mic skills have been downgraded. Like her ring work is still there, but it's just like it's just not the same. And he doesn't know how to develop these guys, you know. And if we can see it, everybody else can. That's what I'm, you know.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So Xander, away from wrestling, what are some of your other hobbies and interests?
I play the guitar. I haven't played as much as I would like to because I got back into school. I'm a nurse now. I go to concerts. I like hanging out with my girl, my dog, and my cat. We go out and we eat food. I like Disneyland. It's just, you know, things like that. Like I keep it kind of simple these days. I'm 42. So like, you know, my hardcore days are kind of behind me, but like, I go to a lot of shows. Like I love live music. That's one of my favorite things to do.
Gotcha. So, you're a guitarist. I've played guitar the better part of my life, and about 4 years ago, I actually took up bass, and
nice.
I really discovered that all these years I'd been a bass player and just never knew it. So,
oh, nice! That's awesome. Yeah, my dad plays bass, so he kind of like influenced me with everything that came to music. You know, I grew up not just watching wrestling with him, but like listening to Black Sabbath and Dio and Deep Purple and things like that. So in turn, that got me into like listening to like a lot of the heavier bands that I'm into and everything like that. So if it wasn't for my dad, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now, to be honest with you.
Gotcha. So you said you're a nurse. I used to be a paramedic. What area of nursing are you in?
I work in mental health. So right now I have 2 jobs. I work at a rehab facility for adolescents that have substance abuse and mental health issues. And then I do hospice on the side.
Oh man, you are doing God's work.
Thank you. Yeah. Like, you know, I had other jobs and then the pandemic hit and I lost them. Obviously, that's a common thing that a lot of people went through. And my mom, she's like, why don't you go back to school? And she's always been wanting me to go back into school anyway. And I was like, dude, nothing's going on. The world is literally shut down. Why don't I just do this? And I ended up being pretty good at it. And I pursued it. And here I am today.
That's awesome, man. That's a lot to be proud of.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, does your family or any of your significant others watch wrestling with you?
My girlfriend will sit here begrudgingly and watch it with me. She's sitting here right now listening to it. So she sits there and she puts up with it. She's a very nice woman and understanding. She says it's not that bad. She knows a lot of the characters, and she knew a lot of the characters from back in the day too. And so she likes some of the people, like, you know, she'll see some of the guys like MJF. She gets a kick out of. Stratton, like, you know, stuff like that. She knows about the Bloodline and Jey Uso and Rhea Ripley. So yeah, she likes all the music and everything. So yeah, she watches it with me. My dad and I used to watch it back in the day. So like our goal, because like when I was in high school, I was like, I fucked around a lot. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this.
Yeah, it's fine.
I messed around a lot. So my dad like had bargaining chips for me. He's like, dude, if you go to this amount of classes, if you do this well on your test, we'll get the pay-per-view on Sunday. And so I did that. And my dad and I had a lot of bonding moments over pro wrestling. So we used to watch it together. I have a couple buddies, like my partner with my podcast. He'll come over once in a while. I have another buddy that does the artwork for us. He watches it with us. So I have a little crew that I watch with. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. My wife, is definitely not a fan. She, since I started doing these live streams, she's actually understanding a little more now why I'm a fan.
Right.
Right. So it's been, that's been kind of good. And my son will watch it, but he's not really a fan. I actually, a few weeks ago, went out to Augusta, Georgia, which is about 2 hours from here, to an indie show. And I took Zach, my son, with me. And on the way back, he was telling me, I had a better time than I thought I was going to. So,
nice. That's awesome. Yeah. And, people know that, like, because like a lot of the times, especially back in the day when it wasn't as popular before the Attitude Era, like I used to get a lot of heat, like, oh, dude, you watch that? It's fake. And like this and that. And then so like I'd not explain it, but they'd see why I like it. And I'd like show them like the nuances of it. And they're like, oh yeah. Dude, I kind of get where you're coming from. And then it's cool when you do tell someone how a match is put together or how they call it in the ring or how they change on the fly. It's interesting. Like to me,
it is. It is, and the thing is, like a lot of wrestlers, I hate the F word, the fake.
Me too.
I mean, predetermined, yes. Scripted, yes. But I mean, there's, those guys take a beating. So,
right. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that like, it's not what a lot of people think it is. And you can't fake the physicality. Like, no, it's like, it would be fake if like, say I got picked up and someone said cut, and then they put someone else's body in my place.
Exactly.
Then we can use that word all day.
Yeah, you don't get a stunt double.
No, dude, like, yeah, and it's like it's just the back bumps, like the tie-ups, the holds, everything. It's just like you want to make it as real as possible without like hurting someone. And sometimes things slip in the way. Sometimes you get potatoed, and that's just the way it goes.
Absolutely. So speed round. Scott D'Amore.
So, okay, like before I mess this up, are we only doing one word or like just like a phrase?
It can be a phrase. It can just your thoughts. I mean, it doesn't have to be a one word, just your first thoughts.
Scott D'Amore, like very unique and innovative. Like, I think he's got a great mind for the business just because like I remember TNA from back in the day. I was flipping the channels like late one night. And it was on Fox Sports or something like that. And I was watching this. It's like, okay, this ring's 6-sided. That's different. Has my eye. And then I just saw the work rate from these guys that I've never seen before. And I was like, holy cow. I think I was watching I think I'd happened to watch Samoa Joe. He was wrestling someone. And I was like, this is amazing. So I watched it more. And then I saw AJ Styles. Then I saw Christopher Daniels. And I was just like, gee, these guys are like off the chain. I've never seen that before in my life, really. And as more I started dipping into it, I was like, and then I started learning about Scott D'Amore, that he wasn't just the Team Canada guy, that he had a lot to do with the inside workings of it besides Jeff Jarrett. And I think the guy's got a great head on his shoulders. And like, I was ashamed to see him go when they
I was too.
Yeah.
That's because I mean, TNA was, I mean, it still is, but I mean, it was clicking on all cylinders when they took it away from him.
Right,
was just
like it was they're like the little engine that could, like, they're always like on their last leg, and then they find a way to bring it up. And it's like they're before Hogan and Bischoff took over, they were like a legitimate alternative to like WWE.
Oh, for sure.
And then Hogan came, and we all know what happened with that.
Yeah. Yep. But you know, I've always enjoyed the irony that, you know, one of their pay-per-views is called Hard to Kill.
Right,
because that's TNA.
Oh yeah, in a nutshell.
You can't kill it.
No, and it's great, man. Like I've been following them from Fox Sports to Spike to like Destination to everything. You know, I try to keep up with them, and it's just cool now that they're doing this thing with NXT. Hopefully we can get some more eyeballs with them, because shit, man, NXT, we got Triple H on the main roster, Shawn Michaels at NXT. Who would have thought?
Yeah,
right.
I know. I was, you know, I've mentioned to several of my guests that the irony that DX is now running WWE is not lost on me. I mean, that is just hilarious.
Yeah, it's great. And it's funny too, because I was watching a documentary years ago. I don't remember who its documentary was, but Kevin Nash was talking, and he said like when they first met Triple H, he was like just all, you know, he wanted to be with the Clique. He wanted to be with Shawn Michaels and everything like that. And they were at an event, and Triple H said something like, "I'm going to be running this place one day. Look where we are."
Yep.
He
knew.
Like, yeah, he knew. Like, you know, and that says something about the person, though. Like, yeah, it's just like people can say what they want about H, but the guy eats, sleeps, and breathes the business. And he's not in it. He's not in it to be a one-man crew. He's got his ear to the ground, and he's like, he knows what the people want without giving them everything that they want, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. And, you know, he's gotten WWE back into long-term storytelling.
Right. Which
you
is
know,
amazing. Like, is amazing, because we've sat there, and I've told people, man, that year, I think it was like maybe 2010 to 2015 or something like that, where it was just atrocious, man. And even like before Triple H completely took over, you can just smell the Vince booking from it.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It's just like, and like, the one thing that I always hated is when they'd bring another wrestler in from another promotion, and they wouldn't talk about anything that he did back before, like they did, as if we don't know. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
We know, and stop treating us like idiots, or like say like even this little things like, so Jey Uso, when he turned from the Bloodline, and then when he went to Raw, people still weren't trying to be buddy with him because of what he did in the past. That's great. That's stuff that we wouldn't get from Vince. And I just think little things like that make the program so much fucking better. And it's just so refreshing that we're there. And the WWE is like firing on all cylinders right now. It's just like, I'm excited to watch a show, you know, when like Friday Night SmackDown goes off air. I'm like, shit, I want it to be next Friday. I haven't felt like that since the Attitude Era.
I know. And, you know, like you were saying, you know, so much of what is happening right now could never have happened under Vince. I mean, you know, I'm not going to negate the contributions the guy made to the business, but you know, he lost somewhere along the way over the years. He lost touch,
right?
And you know. But anyway,
what he did for the business was great. Yeah, I agree with that. But you know,
he overstayed his welcome.
Absolutely.
So, currently, what is your favorite company? What company do you think is really clicking the best right now?
I mean, I really like. Obviously, my number one answer right now to who's clicking the best is WWE right now.
Oh,
like,
for sure, yeah.
They're knocking it out of the park. Like all the PLEs have been tremendous. Like even like the small ones, that the fact that they're doing them internationally just brings a whole different energy to it. Like that, I forget what that was. Backlash in France. That crowd was off the chain.
That crowd was nuts.
Yeah, off the chain. And so like WWE is just hitting it out of the park. MLW, I like catching them. I really like what they're doing with their like sports entertainment clique with Tom Lawler and Davey Boy Smith Jr. But like those are the best off the top of my head. New Japan, like they haven't been the same since like they had that Bullet Club Exodus come out to go to AEW. It hasn't been the same.
No, it hasn't.
Yeah, and I try to keep up because I like Zack Sabre Jr. and Matt Riddle and stuff like that. Dolph Ziggler, that goes back and forth there now. But I think as far as just to get back to your question, it's WWE right now. Like they're just, and then with their new TV deals with Netflix coming up, they're just going to keep going. I've been watching the stuff with Triple H, the press conferences, and he's got a lot up his sleeve. And so I'm excited to see what can happen.
Yeah, same here. And, you know, it's an exciting time to be a fan because for the first time in a long time, you really feel like just about anything is possible.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah.
So, what is, are you a California native or what is your hometown?
Yeah, I was born in Northridge, California. I've been here pretty much. I've been here my whole life. Honestly, I've lived here. Like I love it out here. People have their own opinions about California, but I like it out here. The weather's great. We're close to everything. I don't think I would live anywhere else.
Nice, nice. So what would you say is your favorite thing about California?
You know, I want to say like two things: the weather, and then having access to like concerts and everything like that. Because I've got buddies in other parts of the U.S. and they don't get a lot. They don't get the shows that we get out here. They don't, you don't get as many shows in like Montana or something like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So yeah. Like I'm really thankful that I'm able to live here and do the things that I love to do, which is going to concerts. So yeah, that's my favorite thing about here.
Cool. So speed round. Bobby Heenan.
Oh man, I think that's the greatest. He's the greatest manager of all time. Like the best. And I loved his commentary, and I just loved how the guy could just generate heat. Like you just wanted, like, from when he was just talking to when he was interfering in matches, he was like top notch. Like that guy was great. Absolutely.
So Xander, how did you and Bobby get into podcasting?
Well, I have a horrible memory, so let me bear with me here. We would be hanging out like a lot of late nights. He's married with kids now, with a kid now. I have a long-term girlfriend, but when we were both single, we'd spend late nights like watching like just Kevin Owens or Kevin Steen back then highlights, just talking about wrestling and everything like that. We talk about it in class when we were in high school, and like I think we were talking about Colt Cabana's podcast because he was like the first one wrestler that started it, honestly.
Yeah.
And then we got this whole influx of podcasts, and we were just like, let's just try it out. I did it on my own for a little bit, and it didn't gain much traction because I didn't know what I was doing. And so he's like, maybe let's join up. And so we did that, and we didn't really know what we were doing like for a good long time. We were just flying off the seat of our pants. And I just think we have a natural chemistry, and things just began clicking. And then he's like the brains with like the structure of it. Like he'll put different segments of what to do, how we do it and everything like that. So he helps out a lot with like the structure of the podcast. And then like I come with like a lot of the, knowledge of watching the business for a long ass time. And that's just how we started it. And here we are today still doing it.
Nice. So what has been the most interesting or unusual experience that you've had as a fan? Have you been to a lot of live shows, and have you seen anything unusual or strange? Or
I've been to a good amount of live shows. As far as seeing something strange, no. Like we do have this running joke though with like when you see like grown men, we're already grown men at a pro wrestling show, but like you see these guys walking around with replica belts.
And stuff
like that, and like showing
that
off
guy.
those guys. And like I forget, one of my buddies was like, there should be a rule: if you carry a belt at a show, you should have to defend it on the spot.
Yep.
And so like every time we watch wrestling now and we see a guy with a belt, we got to put it on the line. And so I think that when it comes down to that, that's the strangest thing. Like I'm cool with having replica belts. That's probably cool, but they'd stay on my shelf. I wouldn't wear them.
Don't take them to a show. Yeah. Yep. So currently, who are your and this is kind of a three-part question.
Sure.
Who are your favorite wrestlers, your favorite faction, and your favorite tag teams?
Okay. So you want the current ones, right?
Yeah, well, it doesn't even necessarily have to be current. It could be all time.
Okay. So currently, man, there's a lot of things I like currently. Like, I'll start with WWE. I mean, Damian Priest, Rhea Ripley,
Mhm.
Jey Uso. Awesome to see Jacob Fatu here.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
He
Carmelo
has
Hayes.
Jacob Fatu has a presence
Oh
that
yeah,
is, he's just, I mean, he is destined for big things.
he's a future undisputed champion for sure.
Yeah.
When we were watching him in MLW, I was just like, this guy's too big for this promotion. Like every time it would be him and Hammerstone, I was just like, he's the guy that's going to be elevated. Like it's just not just because he's Samoan, just because of what you said, he's got that presence. And like,
Yep.
and it's just like, and now he's like trimmed down and he's just like, oh man, he's a machine. As far as like factions go, my all-time favorite factions, I mean, you got to go NWO, DX, the Horsemen, like you're wearing. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Those were my favorites. I mean, I grew up watching the Horsemen. I mean, the Bullet Club was really cool for a minute. Like I remember when that first started, that took off really well. Tag teams, tag teams now, like I don't know. I'm trying to think of tag teams. I really like the Rascals in TNA.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the GOD when they were in New Japan.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then old school WWE's Heart Foundation, Rockers, Demolition, Road Warriors, things like that. And then of course, like the obvious ones I'm leaving out is like Austin, you know, The Rock, you know, Triple H back in the day, Undertaker, you know, all the classics, you know what I mean? And then like we have the technical guys like Danielson.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, a big Danielson fan. I was a big CM Punk fan, still am. I mean, I loved Christopher Daniels, Nigel McGuinness. I mean, I can just go down the line. I could keep going because there's just so much. There's just such an influx of talent from like back in the day to now and to everybody just getting their thing. I mean, I loved old school ECW, man, like Rob Van Dam, Sabu, like that whole deal with Raven and Tommy Dreamer. That
yeah.
Yeah, you remember? Because I remember I stumbled upon ECW too back in the day. And I was just like, what is this? This is fucking crazy. Like they had these promos like in the woods and Raven would be like in a corner. And then like you'd have wrestling. Like that's where I first saw Chris Jericho. Because after all the craziness that was happening with like the Dudleys putting someone through a table, they're like, we're going to have Chris Jericho wrestle Rob Van Dam. And they had a straight up wrestling match that was great.
Yeah.
So
like
Paul Heyman is just he literally is a genius. Like,
oh, for sure. Absolutely. You know, as far, you know, from my perspective, I'm a big fan of tag team wrestling. And I think FTR is one of the few bright spots AEW has these days.
Right. And I forgot about them and I apologize. Yes.
No. I mean,
they're very good. Like very good.
I like them because they're very old school, nothing flashy, just smash mouth wrestling.
Yeah, and that's what the one thing I liked about them in NXT, because you had like Triple H getting all the indie guys from NXT and stuff, but then you had FTR, who were called the Revival then, and they had on their shirt, it said no flips, just fists. And it was dope because it was different. And it's just like everybody, I think what happened was everybody got into this like high flying spotty stuff. And it's just like infiltrated the whole thing. And it's like, what did we like about wrestling back in the day? You had the big guys, you had the technical guys, you had the tag teams, you had the high flyers, you had the bruisers. Like it's supposed to be a variety of stuff. Like if it's all death matches or all spots, it's going to get boring.
Absolutely. And, you know, another faction that I would like to bring up is the Undisputed Era. I mean, I've really dug them. I'm a long time Adam Cole fan.
Same.
You know, and I feel bad for that dude because these last couple of years he has had a hard run of it, just health wise. He just can't seem to get healthy and stay healthy. You know, he just got over the concussion and then he breaks his leg.
Right, you know? and that was a crazy thing. Like he just jumped off the ramp and he breaks his leg, and that crushes like all this storyline that they had between him and MJF. And I know they tried to bring it back, and it just wasn't the same. No. And it's just like how I was just like, dude, that sucks. Like, and people want to say they want to put their 2 cents in for why he got injured. That's like, that's not the point. Like, it's just, it sucks. He's a great talent. And it's like, I just feel for the guy too, man.
Yep. So, do you find yourself personally gravitating more toward baby faces or heels?
Well, that's a good question, because, you know, it's WWE after the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression Era got back to this thing of like white meat baby faces and like 80s type baby faces that like, there's a time and place for those guys, but like they don't seem to be developed as well as like, say, a heel. You seem to have more, you have more of a ceiling, a higher ceiling when you're a heel, and then people gravitate towards you because like it's different. But like, don't get me wrong, like a white meat baby face like Danielson when he was in WWE was great. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like a white meat baby face like Cena sucked. So it just depends what the crowd like. For me, I like the heels. Because like, you know, there's just more, you can get more in depth with them, man. And it's just like, and then you can always ask that question. It's like, why are they a heel? Are they?
Exactly. Exactly. You know, I was talking to somebody else recently about this topic. And, you know, like you, I tend to gravitate more toward the heels because generally, like you were saying, they're a more compelling character, you know?
Right.
I mean, and usually there's a reason why they are the way they are. They're not just being an asshole to be an asshole. There's usually a motivation. And getting into all of that and the backstory is to me much more interesting than just some good guy.
Yeah, like, you know, G shucks baby face that's like, I'm gonna follow the rules and like do all that stuff. And it's like, that's cool and all, but it's just like, look at Drew McIntyre, for instance. He's a heel, right? But why is he a heel? Because CM Punk's been screwing him over all the time. Would you be a nice guy if that happened? Or same with like, look at Adam Page. Adam Page is this unhinged guy because Swerve went into his house and was standing over his child. So like that would drive anyone nuts in real life. You know what I mean? Oh yeah. Yeah. And, but yeah, I agree with you, man. The heels are generally kind of where it's at. Right.
You know, something I've been noticing, and I'm curious if you've picked up on this at all. It's very subtle right now, but I'm seeing an undercurrent where it looks like the crowd is just slightly starting to turn on Cody.
Oh, I've not noticed that. I haven't looked into it really much, but like I heard some rumors about that if he might even like turn at Bash at Berlin, but I haven't noticed. I just hear them still singing his song. So, but like I can see that happening sooner than later.
I think they will probably keep him babyface through all of this this bloodline stuff. But I think once the bloodline thing is wrapped up, and I think even during the bloodline thing, they're probably going to start planting more and more breadcrumbs for a heel turn. And then, you know, I can see a heel turn where actually they end up doing another match with him and Roman with the roles reversed.
Yeah.
You know, Roman's the face and Cody's the heel.
Right.
And I think they could do some really interesting stuff with that.
They can. And like, yeah, I agree with you on that. Like, because it will be a while before Cody turns. Even if the crowd does turn on him, it'll be a minute. And honestly, because they still have to do all that stuff with The Rock when he comes back. They have so much stuff to do. But like my thing with Cody and him turning heel, he doesn't even have to change his character. Like if he turns heel, because he's already has that condescending tone in his voice, and like he's a great heel. We've all seen it.
Oh yeah, I mean? Oh for sure.
Like, and especially now, like he reminds me of Homelander from The Boys. Like, but it will be great. honestly, because Roman is finally to where they wanted him to be at all these years. And like, if they just pulled the trigger on him turning heel, we could have had this version of Roman like a long ass time ago. But you know, back to your point, yeah, dude, like it's going to happen whether people want to or not. And I'll just keep my ears open for the crowd and stuff like that. Now that you mentioned it,
yeah, it's interesting because you know right now it is pretty subtle, but I do feel like there's an undercurrent.
Okay.
So,
I know there is an undercurrent online, but like online versus like the crowd is like totally different. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure, for sure. So, so do you have an all-time favorite match as a fan?
Oh man, all-time favorite match. Let me see.
It's hard, isn't it?
Oh, it's so hard because there's so many matches. Like, I mean, I know this is like a trendy one, but it's just off the top of my head. It's just WrestleMania 17 with Stone Cold and The Rock. Not just because of what happened with Stone Cold turning heel and joining Vince, but just the buildup from all of that. When they had that sit-down interview and like Stone Cold was like, I need to win this. Like, I need this match. And it was just like, I remember that still to this day. Like, that one was great. I mean, the career-ending match at WrestleMania 7 with Macho Man and the Ultimate Warrior, like where Macho Man like just pretty much put Ultimate Warrior in a good match, who was not known for his like ring work, you know what I mean? And Macho Man like just they had one of the best matches ever. And then like Kenny Omega and Okada, those are like clinics, you know what I mean?
Oh, for sure, for sure.
And then like Ospreay and Omega. I mean, AJ Styles and Nakamura, Wrestle Kingdom, like before they both went to WWE, those are great, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And then like, I did like from WCW, I mean, there's that match at Halloween Havoc. I forget what the year was, but Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio just put on an awesome match. And it was just incredible. I still watch that, come back to that till this day. Like, amazing.
One of my favorites, I would put it in my top three, was actually from WrestleMania 20, the triple threat with Benoit, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. And you know, I can actually separate Chris Benoit's resume and his body of work from the man and what he did.
Right.
You know, I can still go back and watch Chris Benoit matches and enjoy what he could do. You know,
yeah, me too.
It's a terrible shame how he ended up, but you know,
because he was one of the best ever, honestly.
Oh, for sure.
And I remember watching him as the Pegasus Kid back in the day. And and I have no problem like separating that as well. I'll never celebrate him, you know what I mean? But like if it's a match of the week and he happens to be on it, you know, awesome. Like, you know, I'll totally watch his matches. And, you know, it's just a shame, like you said, like the way that ended up, because he is literally like one of the best to ever lace up a pair of boots.
Oh, for sure. For sure. So let me scroll up here. Okay. Speed round.
All right.
Paul Levesque.
Oh man. He was always one of my favorites. Like always one of my favorites. I remember watching him from WCW as Terror Rising.
Oh yeah.
And my dad and I used to always laugh because he would do the bow thing as John Paul Levesque. Yep. And then like, I never thought from watching him as like John Paul Levesque and then watching him as Hunter Hearst Helmsley that not only like forget like that he runs the place now, but I just didn't think he would be at the top of the game like where he was. No pun intended. You know,
nor did I. I mean,
I thought he'd be a mid-carder, you know, forever.
Yeah. Looking at the old Terror Rising matches and even the early, you know, Hunter Hearst Helmsley when he was playing the aristocrat, like you, I never thought the guy was going to amount to much.
Me neither. Like he had a ceiling. I mean, his ceiling wasn't as high as I thought it was. And then like, you know, and the thing is, the guy is a smart dude because he started hanging out with Shawn Michaels, who was a main eventer. And I'm sure these guys talked up and down the road. Same with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. And, he turned into like this top guy. And, a lot of people still give him shit saying like he's only top guy because he was under Steve Austin. The Rock doesn't matter. He's still a top guy, like exactly. Say what you want about the Reign of Terror, but like Triple H is a great wrestler. He knows the business inside out. Like, did he have some hiccups and stuff? Do I agree with his politics sometimes? No. But like, come on, when you're a top guy, you're gonna play that game. They all do.
Right. And he definitely had a reputation as a backstage politician.
Right, he did.
But I will say he has matured into his role very nicely. Yeah,
so. And after say he dropped that world title after that Reign of Terror thing, and like he became a face again. Like it wasn't as political, you know what I mean? Like like the Booker T, Rob Van Dam stuff was back then, and like he was a little bit better of how he did stuff, you know what I mean? Putting people over, I guess you could say. But like I just thought like the only problem I had with him is with that Booker T feud. Like all the other time, and then unmasking Kane, but that's a whole different other story. But the Booker T feud, it's just like, dude, that was weird. And Booker T can be a bootlicker all he wants and say that he agrees with the decision, but it's just like, just the way that it played out, it's just like, come on, man. Like, how are you supposed to go over on that? But
absolutely. So have you had a chance to meet any of your wrestling heroes at any point?
That's funny. Like, well, we can start off since we're talking about Triple H. I was at a house show. I was like 16. And so I had a seat in the aisle, and Triple H had just got together with Shawn Michaels, and they were just doing the DX thing. Triple H was still wearing the robe. And so I had a sign that said H cubed for president. And like I had my hand out and he slapped it. And as a 16-year-old kid, I was so stoked that like Triple H like slapped my hand and stuff like that. And so that was pretty cool. I met a bunch of guys like at signings, and stuff like that. Like I met the Honky Tonk Man. I remember I had a couple drinks because we were on the train and stuff like that. So I was feeling a little good. And I was like, dude, the Honky Tonk Man. I was like, shook his hand. I was like, that was great. Like my best memory of you is when you got squashed by Ultimate Warrior at SummerSlam. And he's like, yeah, that was the quickest $50,000 I ever made. And I was like, well, you got me there. So like,
yeah.
But like, the list is pretty long of who I've ran into. And, but the thing is like, most of them are really cool guys. Like, they're respectful. Like as long as you're not being like, a mark with all your stuff and everything like that.
Right.
I'm not one of those guys that waits at airports for them to do that.
Right.
That's so annoying. Like, but other than that, yeah, I've met a handful of them. Like I'm not so much these days because I don't know. I don't have the patience to stand in line or anything like that anymore. It was more during like, my younger days.
Absolutely. So, who would you say is the greatest mind in the history of wrestling?
The history of wrestling, in the history.
Yeah. Who would you say is the greatest mind?
Well, I'm going to split this answer up into two things because when it comes to bringing wrestling to like a nationwide audience, I'm going to give that to Vince McMahon. Because even though he did something underhanded and like killed the territories and everything like that, just the way he brought it to everybody's like household versus like watching the territories and stuff, I think that was great. As far as like booking wise and like, things like that, it's just like I need Paul Heyman off the top of my head just because he was just so original. And like just the way he took people from ECW that like, guys in like WCW or WWF wouldn't even look at these guys twice and made them like household names. Like who the fuck would think the Sandman would wrestle? But that guy comes out and the roof goes off the fucking place. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's incredible how he did that. And then when they got brought to WWE, it just went downhill because they didn't have Paul E developing these guys.
Right.
And so like that, and then for me too, it's like, this is also one like Eric Bischoff gets a lot of heat, but he's also a guy that almost put the WWF out of business.
Yep.
Because
very close.
What he did was revolutionary, because even though the NWO and that whole thing of taking over was something he took from New Japan, he like put his spin on it, and he made it to where like like they'll always say it, like the lines were like blurred. You're like, shit, are these guys from WWF? Or like they're the way they were doing it. And it was like, It was cool, man, because you didn't know what was going to happen. And I'll always take it back to that one scene on Monday Nitro where they're like wrestling a match and they're like, oh my God, we got to get to the back. And there's just people laid out. And Kevin Nash throws Rey Mysterio like a lawn dart.
Yeah.
And it looked like a fucking crime scene. All the baby faces and heels were like consoling each other. And it was just like, they were like, what is going on? And so that's good too. So I'm going to go Vince, Bischoff, and Paul E.
Those are actually my three as well. So,
oh, nice.
yeah. So, knowing everything you know now, Xander, just in life, if you could give any advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Man, be patient. Don't be so impulsive. And let trust the process. Cause like even till this day, I am an instant gratification type of person. I'm not as bad as I used to be, but I could still use some work. But like, I think I would have enjoyed a lot more things back then if I would have just be more patient and trusted how things would have went. And
absolutely.
And like, maybe like my wrestling career would have been a little bit longer if I trusted the process a little bit longer.
Yeah. Yep. But like I said, things happen for a reason, man. And it sounds like you're in a good place in life. So
I am. And it's like, even those things that happened to me and all the negativity that I've been through, I wouldn't be the person I am today, or wouldn't be having this conversation with you if I didn't go through those things. So,
exactly.
Like, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity and just to be here, like living my best life, because I've been through a lot of stuff, and I'm just like, now, like, I'm enjoying my life, and it's great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Something that I wanted to bring up, I actually had it on my mind, and then, my train of thought jumped the tracks, but, you were talking earlier when we were talking about ECW, about Raven. And,
right.
Something that I always dug about Raven, and it always reminded me actually of Jake the Snake Roberts, is both of those guys in their promos, they rarely would raise their voice.
Yes, absolutely.
They were, and in many ways, their promos were more menacing by not raising their voice, not yelling and screaming and having veins popping out of their head, just quietly telling you what they were going to do, what they were all about. And I mean, the psychology that those guys, both of them, could implement in their promos and in their in-ring, was just phenomenal. I'm a huge Raven fan.
Me too. And I'm a huge Jake fan too. And just for those reasons that you mentioned. And it's like, because we grew up we watched wrestling in the steroid era, like you said, with the Ultimate Warrior talking about rocket ships, and Hogan like talking about doing the backstroke in the Pacific, but then you had Jake, who was just quiet, and it would just raise his eyebrow and just say all this stuff. And then with Raven, even more so, like, and it was just like me as a 16-year-old kid that was very angsty and like mad at the world. I really connected with a character like Raven, just like seeing that, because like I wasn't a big dude, I wasn't a jock, but like I was like kind of like Raven, that outcast, and I was just like, dude, it was pretty interesting. And like I would always look forward to like a Raven promo, more, like I loved his matches, but like the promo and the lead up to the match is really what like got me into like liking Raven. And I liked him more than Dreamer, and I liked him more than Sandman. And it was just, that was like one of the things that had me turn the corner from watching wrestling in a different way,
Yeah. Yep. And, something else I'll say about Jake Roberts, I understand how it did over the years, but I hate the fact that a DDT has turned into a mid-match move rather than a finisher.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Jake's DDT, it looked like he just killed somebody. I mean,
you know what? I like yell about that all the time on our podcast. It's like I just cannot stand like I'm old school with finishing moves. I'm like one of those people is like if you hit your finish, it should be over. Unless it's like a championship match. But like the fact, like if I had it my way, we wouldn't be kicking out of a DDT. You know what I mean? If I had it my way, a Canadian destroyer wouldn't be like a clothesline. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it's fucking crazy because it just takes away from what a finisher should be. So what finishes a guy? And that's another problem that I have with ECW, or not ECW, AEW. Like in a match on Dynamite, there's so many false finishes. And it's like, so what's gonna finish the match? You have a 720 off a ladder, and the guy kicks out at 2.5. Come on.
Yeah, that's not. I mean, there's got to be some shred of realism, and that's what I mean. That's not realistic.
Seriously, and it's just like some things. Like if you get dropped on your head, that should be the end of the match. That's just how I am.
Absolutely. So, this is a good segue to this next question.
Sure.
Do you have a favorite move that you love to see done? And on the flip side, is there a move that scares you to watch?
Okay, one of my favorite moves, it's like the Stone Cold Stunner or like the RKO, and then I like the 5-star frog splash. But like a move that I get scared seeing is like a burning hammer. Or like and like a pile driver, even like that stuff always scares me just because of what we saw with multiple people.
Right.
So that one always like gives me the creeps. And then like anytime someone's doing something crazy outside, like that's just like when who are those guys? It's the Top Flight guys. Those guys.
Oh yeah, the Martin brothers.
Yeah, those guys scare me. The Lucha Bro, like Ray Phoenix, scares me because I've seen them get injured. And it's just like, that's like, people like to rag on the WWE because they make them wrestle a style, but they've shown that you're going to last longer versus like in AEW or other promotions where it's just like, and the thing is like, save that shit for like a pay-per-view match, for like a special match. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly. Don't do it every week.
Right. I remember when we saw a moonsault back in the day, and that was like one of the best things ever. Now you see it in every match.
Yeah.
And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no. I also think AEW relies too much on blood.
Right.
I mean,
Jon Moxley.
Yeah, but I mean, Jon Moxley, you talk to him and he bleeds.
Right.
I mean,
Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Like, but because like, this is what I've learned, because like when they started peeling the curtain back in wrestling, as a wrestling fan, I loved it because I wanted to learn the ins and outs of it, because that's what I wanted to do with my life. And it's like, when you put something on so much, people get turned off to it. They get desensitized to it. Blood is cool if you're in a big match, or if you're in a feud, or like if it's something to escalate where it's gone, like say WrestleMania 13 with Hitman and Austin. Like that was a good time to use it. Jon Moxley wrestling like a match on Dynamite? No. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And Chris Jericho brought up something pretty recently on one of his podcasts. It was when he was in New Japan, so it wasn't recently, but he was saying he's fighting Naito, and he said, I'm going to attack him on the ramp, and nobody else do that, and we're going to fight outside. And he's like, the reason was because it's like, we want to make sure that has the impact that it does on the audience. Because then if everybody else done it, it loses its steam. And he's totally correct. And like, that's what I feel like, this feeding frenzy in AEW, because they have that crowd that likes all that shit and they'll cheer for whatever. But the problem with that is he's not attracting other viewers that like don't, that want to see something else. You already have those marks. Get somebody else. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but what are your views, Xander, on fan tribalism? Meaning, like WWE fans absolutely hating anything AEW does, or vice versa. I mean, personally, I love all of it. So I think the tribalism is counterproductive.
Yeah, I think it's fucking stupid. Because there's multiple problems with this. I don't care about liking what you like. You know what I mean? If you only like WWE, that's fine. But what I've seen online, and probably what you've seen online too, is just like people wanting other companies to go out of business, people happy that they got fired, people not liking someone because they liked them in WWE, but now they're in AEW and they don't like them, and vice versa. It's stupid, because you know what? These guys are all friends. Even though they're at promotions, they know each other. It's a small group. And with more promotions and more job opportunities, that's more opportunities for these guys to have a livelihood. And it's good for us as fans to like watch, to have more people there. Because when WWE was the only game in town, like it wasn't that good. You know what I mean? And it's just like, even with WWE being here and AEW being down here, there's still an opportunity for other people. And then that gives opportunities for people at TNA. And there's people's opportunity in MLW, New Japan. So, and if you don't like it, it's simple. Don't watch it, but don't
exactly.
Don't hope for somebody to lose their fucking livelihood because you don't like it. Back in the day, I watched both. I leaned more towards WWF, but I watched WCW too because I like Sting and I like Luger and I like NWO. You know what I mean? I like Jericho. So I like everything. And like, with the exception of like just like death matches, like there's a time and place for that, but that's my least favorite. But I'm just saying, as tribalism goes, it's like, come on, man, you're not even getting paid by these guys. So why does it matter?
Exactly. Well, it's funny. As a kid living in the South, I was pretty much a WCW guy.
Right.
And I remember turning on my TV on Saturday night, and the Black Saturday thing happened where McMahon had come in and bought out Georgia Championship Wrestling, and suddenly we had WWF on.
Right.
And so it took me a long time to become a WWF fan because the whole Black Saturday thing had put a really bad taste in my mouth.
I bet that's what I've heard from a lot of people that went through that. Like, I wasn't around then, but I've read up about it, but I understand that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I didn't really start watching much in the way of WWF until I was in college, which was years later, the early 90s. And then, that was kind of my first exposure to that. Was right when Undertaker was getting started, and I saw some cool things were starting to happen. So I started kind of watching WWF at that point. But like I said, I had a thing against them for a long time.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. See, for me it was the reverse. Like, I started off watching WWF young, and then I went back and I participated in the tape trade. And so like I got stuff from like WCCW, NWA, AWA. And then that's where I learned that guys like Piper and Hogan and the Von Erichs and the Freebirds and all that stuff. And I really dug that. And I was just like, damn, that kind of sucks that, I didn't get to like witness that in real time, because like I loved going in the back and watching the Von Erichs and the Freebirds wrestling. Like that's an amazing piece of history right there.
It is. Yeah. Well, we are getting close to the end of things for tonight, but Xander, this has been a blast.
Oh, I'm having a great time.
And we should definitely plan on doing another one of these, because I feel like there's so much more territory we could get into.
Yeah, man. Like, I could keep going on this, but yeah, I would love to come back on if you have me. Like, this has been a blast.
Oh, for sure. Right. And I'd love to come on y'all's podcast. And talk about this stuff, man.
Yeah, we definitely want to get you on there. Let me set something up with my partner, and we can have you on there. We have a segment called Inside the Ring that we usually reserve for like little pieces of history in the business, things that are happening. You know, we used to cover Dark Side of the Ring when it was on, and then we'd like to have we have like ex wrestlers that come on, and we'd love to have you on because you're a big part of this business. I see you doing interviews with up and coming pro wrestlers, up and coming musicians, and like what we're all about is trying to help each other out, spread the word of stuff that we love.
Exactly. And you know, final word on the whole tribalism thing, you know, really a rising tide lifts all ships. So,
Absolutely.
you know, I mean, I wish good for any wrestling company that's out there because it's more places for guys to work. It's more places for guys to hone their craft. And you never know who's going to break big. I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
you know,
I mean,
so.
look at Swerve Strickland. He's holding it down. And I was watching him from like from back in the day. I watched him in Lucha Underground, and now he's the world champion, and he's on a great run, and he's got a great match that's coming up with Danielson on Sunday that I'm going to be tuning into. So like, you know, it's just all about opportunities because all these guys that are popular now have been doing this for like at least 10 plus years. Even that's at the least. And so to see them getting their dues is really refreshing. And like, I want all these companies to succeed to the best that they can.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny that you brought up Lucha Underground. Lately, I've been going down the Lucha Underground rabbit hole, and I'm most of the way through the first season. And man, that is some great stuff.
It is.
You know,
I remember when that came out, and I was just so stoked on it because like it was such a different spin on a wrestling show. Like, because you watch WWF, right? It's a show. It's a promotion that puts on a wrestling show. So Lucha Underground is a show about a wrestling promotion, which is crazy. Like, it's so cool.
Yep. Well, anyway, so, you know, before we wrap this up, do you have anything upcoming that you would like to hype?
Yeah, for all you guys out there that talking about pro wrestling and listening to takes on pro wrestling, follow us on Xander and Bobby's WrestleOcalypse. We're on all streaming platforms. You can get on me on Instagram on Xander Hobbes, XANDER_HOBBES. I take all questions, and if you put in questions, we'll put them in our mailbag, and like we just talk about wrestling, TV shows, music, anything you can think of. And it's actually a pretty cool show. We've been doing it since 2020, and we're just trying to keep the ball rolling.
Awesome. Well, for those of you guys that have been watching this live, thank you. For those of you that'll be seeing this in replays and such, thank you for that. If you like what we've got going here, continue to spread the word. This thing is really taking on a life of its own, and it's just exciting to watch it grow. I mean, I'm excited to say that, you know, I tried to do generally no more than 3 streams a week, but with that cadence, I'm now booked for the next 2.5 weeks. So
incredible. That's so cool.
It's exciting. It really is.
I love it.
And I'm excited to see where it's all going. I mean, I feel like I'm just along for a really cool ride right now. So
same here. And I appreciate it. Thank you again for having me on this. I hope to do more in the future, and you're more than welcome to be on our show too.
Absolutely. And you know, the more cross promotion and cross pollination we can do, the better. So
right on. I would agree.
Anyway, everybody have a great night. I'm going to be back on actually tomorrow afternoon. I've got an early start tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to be on with an indie wrestler from South Carolina called DPJ. And I've actually seen some of his stuff on the web, and he trained, you know, he's another guy that trained under a pretty well-known trainer here in the Southeast named Ethan Case. And Ethan really puts out some very talented, very TV ready product. And I'm definitely excited to talk to DPJ tomorrow.
Amazing.
So anyway, I've got him tomorrow at 4:30, and then Wednesday at 7, I've got a guy based here in Georgia, a masked wrestler named Cuatro Cabezas. So,
very cool.
Anyway, yeah. So
awesome.
Anyway, so everybody have a good night. I'll be back at 4:30 tomorrow, and